Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm your host, Shelly. I lead the marketing team for Nivitas. So, this is the third webinar from our robotic process automation webinar series. And today we will talk about how robotic process automation can be utilized in the manufacturing industry. So, before we get started, I would like to run through a few housekeeping points. If you experience any technical difficulties, please share it through a question window on the control panel. If you have any queries related to the topic, post them to the question window. We will save some time at the end of the webinar to answer as many of them as possible. And we will also share the recording of the webinar at the end of the session via email. Now, let me introduce the speaker, Alan Hester. He is the president for Nivitas, and he will lead today's session. Hi, Alan. Welcome to the session.
Hi, Shaylee. Good to be here today.
Great. All right, so before we begin with today's topic, let me give you all a brief overview of Nivitas and its background. So, Nivitas is a company that has been in existence for about 7 years. The company is operating out of multiple offices in the US and India. The vision of the company is to create maximum business value for enterprises around the globe by helping them work at their peak efficiency. The two co-founders of the company have come from Savian, where they were involved in developing the business process management product and were responsible for running the company. The Nivitas team has deep roots in product engineering and software development with an emphasis on digital process automation. The team has various other areas of expertise as well and has served a number of industries. And the company has even won a couple of awards. So that was a quick overview about the Nivitas company. Now I would like to invite Alan to move forward with the presentation. Alan.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Shaylee. So today we're going to be talking about manufacturing and RPA, robotic process automation. I think many people are familiar with the term, so excuse me if you're already ahead of where we're going to start, but we're going to start way back at the beginning. Obviously, those of you that are already in manufacturing know that for a long time, the term robot has been associated with manufacturing, but it's mainly been a different kind of robot. Usually manufacturing, we're talking about physical robots that are used to assemble, test, and package your product and help out in various ways in streamlining the assembly process, but really have nothing to do with all the back office operations of your company. And so because of that, there's a lot of challenges associated with the business that you're in that the robots don't really help out with. So you can see some things that are listed there. Maybe you identify with some of these or maybe with all of them, or maybe you'll say, you know what, I have a lot of problems, but that's not really any of my big ones there. But these are various ones that we know are common within the manufacturing space. So you're probably familiar with some of them. So to amplify then, the difference between robotics in the historical sense as it applies to manufacturing and robotic process automation is that the robotics you might be used to are physical machines that are doing physical tasks. And RPA, on the other hand, is something that is a software machine that's not physical, that's doing a task that would typically be accomplished by a human. So it's usually a repetitive task that's done over and over by a human and usually follows a given set of rules. And by allowing a software robot to do that work rather than a human, you can reduce the human errors, get it done faster, and therefore also free up that human that had been doing that work to do other higher value tasks. So the kinds of things that we typically talk about as being eligible for automation using RPA can be all over the place in your business. The key way that we tell people to identify the best places for using RPA are to look for places where you're using a lot of email or Excel spreadsheets as part of your work process. So if you have a person who spends all day long pulling orders out of email and plugging them into some sort of order entry system, or you get receipts from vendors that have to go into your accounts payable system. These are the kinds of repetitive tasks that generally follow a given set of rules that RPA is very well suited to doing. So sometimes we call them swivel chair operations because they usually involve taking data out of one system and copying that data and pasting it into another system. And so one of the reasons why RPA is so good at this is that in many cases, this same work could be done using more complex integrations where you had some software developers build a custom integration between multiple systems that you already have. The problem with that is that getting those kind of complex integration done usually take a very long time, tie up your IT resources, which you might not have available, and also cost a lot of money. Doing the same kind of integration using RPA is much faster and easier because you're not having to use APIs or write custom code. All of the integration is done through the user interface itself. So the RPA bot operates on your systems the same exact way that the humans do. So some of the benefits that you see when you look at using RPA as compared to humans for doing the same tasks is a more secure system, less error prone. You get a lot more control and documentation over what you're doing. In some cases, these processes that you're talking about might be ad hoc. They might not even be well documented. It's just a person who has been doing the same thing for many years, and they're very adept at what they're doing, but there's no real management insight into how many they're doing in a day or how long it takes to complete a given item. And by passing these tasks over to RPA bots rather than getting them done by humans, you get all of that insight automatically through uh, the dashboards that are available to you when you implement the bots. The other thing that that does for you is that it will give you some sort of audit trail in cases where that's important. Now, for many of your processes, you might say, well, we don't really care about that, but there might be other more sensitive things where you do have some audit requirements or regulations that you have to follow, that having that audit trail available could be very useful to you. So the process that we follow for implementing RPA in an organization, obviously every organization is a little bit different, but there's a same kind of high level process that you can follow regardless of the company that you're looking to implement it within. And it all starts at understanding what are all the business processes that you use in your organization and going through them to identify where is the best place to start. Now, this sounds like a very simple, straightforward task, but to be honest, this is the item that trips up most people because they can't figure out where to start. It seems like such a daunting task to pick out what is going to be the highest value place to start, where you can kind of get the best bang for the buck. And we'll talk in the next slide more about how our quick start program can help you with that. So once you understand all of the processes that are in play in your company, then you have to start looking at which steps within those processes are suitable to use RPA for, and remember to not just implement those processes the way that they're being done currently, but also take a look at the process itself to make sure that it's optimal for what you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes this step in itself can save you a lot of time and aggravation, because you might find that certain things are being done in a way only because they were done this way 20 years ago in response to something that doesn't even exist anymore. So once you have that part down, then you go into the design and look at the business case and details for how you're going to build out that RPA automation prior to going into the actual development. Now, development when it comes to RPA is a little bit different from typical software development because we're not talking about writing code. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the RPA system itself. But then after development is done, then you deploy to production so that you can actually start reaping the benefits. So within Nividus RPA, which is our RPA product, there's three main components to it. The first one is the studio. And as we were just talking about development, the studio is where the development happens. So as I said before, you don't have to be a developer. You don't have to write any code to develop something out in RPA. If you are technically astute and you're very familiar with how spreadsheets work, the chances are good that you can pick up RPA very quickly and start doing some development on your own, or at least maintain an automation after it's created. So the power to control these things are put in hands of the users themselves that are experts in how the process works, rather than being put in the hands of an IT staff that's kind of distanced from the process itself. So that's all in the studio where that takes place. And then the second component of the RPA solution is the control center. So the control center is the area where you can look at all of the bots that are available in your system, see what they're doing. That's where all of the bots are controlled, and that's where you see kind of the breakdown of your dashboards, what they're doing, reporting and monitoring, deploying bots against certain processes. One of the things that people often ask is, does a bot have to be confined to doing a specific process only, or are they able to do many different processes? And the answer to that is, once you have built out a process in RPA, any bot is able to do any automation for you, but they can only do one at a time. So you can have a bot that will go through and do multiple different processes over the course of the day as needed, or you can have specific bots that are dedicated to specific tasks and they only do that given task. One of the great advantages of using bots for these kinds of work is you don't have to worry about them getting bored or distracted. They're going to crank out the same amount of production over time. So you don't have to worry about the same kind of things that you worry about when it comes to humans doing these tasks. And then the last piece of this is the bots themselves. And obviously the bots are the ones that are deployed on the machines and they actually do the work. So the bots generally have to be on a dedicated either physical or virtual machine. And the main reason for that is for auditability, but also to prevent confusion. Sometimes people ask, well, can a bot work on the same machine as a human? And although it might technically be possible, we don't recommend that because there are cases with certain systems that you might be controlling where they could get confused whether the system is being controlled by the bot or by a human at a given time. So it's best if the bots are operating on their own. Now, I want to just take a minute here and kind of send you out a poll to get an idea of where each of you are in your digital transformation journey. So I put this poll up. You can take a couple of seconds to respond to that and just let us know where you are in terms of RPA and RPA tools. And I'll just leave this open for a couple more seconds to allow you to respond. Okay, great. So we'll move forward from that. And I want to ask you one other thing here while we're at this point. If you are at the point where you have done more than just think about it, do you know what RPA software you're currently using? Now, you might say, we are using something. I have no idea what it is. That's fine. If you don't know, you can just put other. If you do know, put what you're currently using. And then one last thing I want to ask you before we move on from this, and this just kind of gives us a sense of, as we talk through this, where you guys are and how applicable this is to what you're trying to do as a company. But then the last piece is, how many RPA automations have you done so far in your company? Okay, great. So looks like some of you guys are experienced and some that are totally new to this, which is what we typically see. So that's great. We're going to move on now after spending some time talking about kind of the theory of RPA, what it is, and how Nividus RPA works. The thing that makes it real for people is to take a look at what other companies that are similar to you might be doing in this space. And so we're working with a lot of different companies that are doing RPA work and seeing some great results in really short time frames by using it. And as I said, one of the big advantages that people see for using RPA versus other options that they could have for doing the same kind of work is not only is it more or less expensive and takes less time, but it also generally doesn't have to get involved in a lot of the red tape as some of the bigger type implementation projects you might do. Like if you're looking at doing some kind of global ERP implementation or even a customization of your ERP system, you can see in your mind how complicated that gets and how big the numbers are and the timelines associated with that. Whereas RPA, you don't typically have issues like that. It's generally something that can be accomplished very quickly with a pretty small team and see a real tangible ROI. So the first case that we're going to talk about here is one that you're probably all familiar with. It has to do with the goods receipt note process. And in this case, we were using RPA standalone, where we're not, I'll go into this more in the second case, but in a lot of our situations, we're looking at using RPA in tandem with business process management software. So in this case, where I say it's standalone, I'm saying that the RPA system is not working in conjunction with business process management. So in this case, the company was using Oracle ERP, and they were doing this process all manually, where Excel was being used in conjunction with Oracle ERP, and there was a manual process of reconciling the two, where items were getting searched manually, and the information was found and updated from one system to the other. And obviously, that's not only a time consuming process, but also very error prone. So we were able to automate these tasks using RPA bots to reduce the manual work and the human errors, and to increase the productivity overall. And the great thing about this is that the solution using RPA did not require any changes to the ERP system, because the work was done on the ERP system through the user interface that was already there. So there were no modifications needed to that. The second example is dealing with a manufacturing company that makes telecom equipment, and the specific task here is basically their site procurement system. They used a manual process that involved a lot of email, and receiving email and email attachments between their internal staff as well as vendors, and getting status updates of where the improvements are within the site procurement process itself. And so this task, as I said, involved receiving emails and email attachments, updating that information into Excel between internal users and vendors, and also within their SAP system as well. So uh, a bunch of different systems involved, a lot of different people involved, and this is another case where RPA is very good. The larger the number of participants in a transaction, the more benefits that RPA can bring to you, not just in terms of speed associated with getting it done, but also in terms of the amount of errors that it can reduce. Okay. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of a taste. We've worked with several different manufacturing companies that have different use cases. As I said, your situation could be different. But if you think about in your mind, where are those places where you're using lots of email and Excel spreadsheets? Typically, we find them in the back office type operations, more so than on the production side. But your case could be different. And so when we think about the RPA Quick Start, which I mentioned earlier, the way this works is uh, recognizing the fact that many of you, if you were to decide, hey, you know what, this RPA thing sounds pretty good to me, but I really just don't know where to start. And I mentioned earlier also about how that first step in the process can sometimes be the most daunting for people, because they don't know where to start. So we take that out of the equation for you by offering up within the RPA Quick Start everything that you need in order to really not just get started, but to get your first process in production. So this includes all of the licensing you need and all the services that you need to get something completely from idea to production. And that includes an upfront workshop, which is where you kind of can go through the process inventory within your company and figure out, not just on your own, but with a team of our experts that do this all the time, where is the best place for you to start? And just having that piece alone done for you or facilitated with you is enough to get a lot of people over the hump. So after the workshop is complete and you know what work needs to be done, the whole process only typically takes 4 to 6 weeks to go from the point of having the idea to actually getting something out into production. And this is something that we are happy to talk to you more about. If you have more detailed questions on how this works, certainly uh, let us know either by typing something into the question window in the webinar now, or you could also send us an email after the fact, and we'll get back to you. So that's the end of the prepared content. And we usually like to take some time at the end to go through a little bit of Q&A, and we have a couple of minutes for that. However, I'm on my laptop today and I can't really see the questions very well. So Shaylee, maybe you could chime in and let me know what questions we might have that we can answer in the next couple of minutes.
Sure. So I see the couple of questions coming in, and if I were to take the first one, that goes like, what are some of the challenges and pitfalls to avoid with respect to RPA implementation in manufacturing industry?
Okay, so that's a great question, and I think the answer to this is probably to some extent dependent on your company, but there are some generic things as well. One of the things is that you want to be very careful that you keep in mind up front that in many cases RPA isn't suitable to be considered a long-term solution. So often it is just a bridge to get you where you're trying to go and to get it done more quickly. You know, sometimes you're wanting to go down a certain path, but you realize that the expense associated with getting there is so high that you don't want to have to commit to that all up front. And this is where RPA can be a very useful tool where you can kind of dip your toe in and see if it looks like that's really the direction you want to go in before having to commit a lot of time and dollars to a full-blown big scale implementation of something. The other thing to keep in mind is that you want to, when you're doing an RPA implementation, you want to find the areas where exception handling is going to be kept to a minimum, because that's where you get your best results. Obviously, no process is ever going to be perfect, and you're never going to find a case where there's no exceptions at all. But if you're able to identify the areas where there will be as few exceptions as possible, that will make your results that much better. What else do we have, Shaylee? We probably have time for one, maybe two more. Shaylee, are you still with me?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I would repeat the question again. How does AI integrate with RPA, and what are the use cases?
Okay, so this is a good question, and I think this one is dependent on which RPA system you're using. Different RPA systems have different things that they offer in terms of AI. The Nividus RPA system is built in a modular fashion so that if you have AI tools that you're already working with, they can easily plug in to perform any part of the process that you would like them to. So a common use case for AI as it comes with RPA is to deal with those exceptions that we talked about. Because the ROI on RPA, I feel like I'm talking a lot of acronyms here, because the ROI of RPA is determined by keeping the number of exceptions as low as possible. If you can use AI to learn how to deal with exceptions over time, you can end up getting better results overall. And so that's commonly where AI is used when it comes to RPA, is being able to automate the process of dealing with exceptions and exception handling. So I think we're at the end of our time now, but if you have any other questions, or if you've entered in questions that we haven't had a chance to respond to here, we will make sure to follow up via email. You can also email us additional questions if you come up with them after the fact. And as Shaylee said, the recording of this session will be available to everyone. And if you have other people in your company or even outside your company that you think might be interested in viewing this after the fact, it will also be available on demand. Shaylee, anything else?
No, great. So, as I said, we are at the end of the session. So, we will answer the questions via email, the rest of the questions that we have received. And we should close the webinar now. So, thank you, Alan, for such great insights. And I hope all the attendees have enjoyed the webinar. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.